Since the first COVID-19 case was reported in January this year, India has reported over 50 lakh positive cases. This number represents all those who were able to get a test and therefore entered official records. This number, massive as it is not a true indicator of the spread of the infection. To understand how many people have been infected in a given area, irrespective of whether they show the symptoms of COVID-19, is the job of a Serosurvey. The Indian Council of Medical Research has released initial findings of a study that is still underway. The first part of the Serosurvey was conducted by the ICMR between May 11th and June 4th, which found that almost 64 lakh people were infected with the SARS-CoV-2 virus as early as in the beginning of May. That is 0.73% of the population. This is called the seropositivity rate. The number of reported cases at this time was around 50,000. Surprisingly, the seropositivity was highest in the age group of 18 to 45 years with 43.3%, and it was the lowest among those aged above 60 with 17.2%. The seropositivity rate was around 70% in rural areas, challenging the assumption that rural India was largely untouched by the infection in May. But these highlights and discussion of the survey is meaningless without understanding the methodology that was followed to conduct it. So here are 5 things you need to know before you get into the details of the survey. 1. This nationwide survey is going to be the first of many. A single survey is not enough to get a wider picture of the infection in the population, especially when we are in the middle of a pandemic. According to the ICMR, a second survey is already underway, whose result may be released by the end of this month. Repeated sero surveys can inform us the changes in the extent and the speed of the transmission while also offering us clues to improve the containment strategies. Meanwhile, many cities which have become the hotspots of COVID-19 are conducting their own surveys to understand the spread of the virus. 2. The size of the sample. When done right, what appears as a small sample can provide great insights. In this study, the ICMR scientists chose a random sample of 28,000 from 70 districts across 21 states. These were further divided into 4 strata depending on the incidence of reported COVID-19 cases per million population. These 70 districts were supposed to be the representative of 736 districts of the country. Around 6,000 people were chosen from each of these stratum. The researchers arrived at this number by making a number of assumptions. One of the important assumptions was that at least 1% of the people in each strata would turn out to be positive in the survey. But the final seropositivity rate of 0.73% shows that the sample size was not strong enough to estimate the prevalence of infection in low incidence areas. Significantly, all 28,000 in the random sampling were 18 and older, meaning no children were part of the sero survey. This is expected as in the early days of the pandemic, when the survey was conducted, the focus was on the older individuals, especially those above 60. However, the second survey has included those above age 10. This is especially significant as COVID-19 has been atypically affecting the children. The researchers used 2 kinds of antibody tests in the sero survey. 1. The KAVACH ELISA test, designed locally by the Institute of Virology with Zydus Cadila. 2. The EUROIMMUN ELISA. Both use the same technique called ELISA to detect the antibody immunoglobulin G. To refresh your memory, sensitivity is the ability of a test to correctly identify the positives. The specificity of a test refers to its ability to correctly identify the negatives. We have explained this in other videos as well, so make sure to click on the link given in the description to know more. The sensitivity and specificity of the KAVACH is 92.4% and 97.9% respectively. The same for EUROIMMUN is 93.8% and 99.6%. The sample would be first tested using KAVACH. If the sample turned out to be positive, it was serially tested again using the EUROIMMUN. Only if both the tests delivered positive results, the sample was declared as positive. When 2 tests are used in this manner, sensitivity and specificity changes. It is now referred to as the serial sensitivity and specificity, which stands at 86.67% and 99.99% respectively. That means the chance of getting false negative has increased and the chance of getting false positives is almost nil. So why did the researchers do this? They addressed this in the paper saying, testing with greater specificity is preferred in a low prevalence setting such as ours to minimize the large number of false positives. Enough to send your head spinning, right? But all that this means is the final seropositivity rate of 0.76% is an underestimation, as we might have missed many positive cases due to the lower sensitivity rate of the testing, resulting in a slight increase of false negatives. Meanwhile, the Telegraph has reported that even this data may not be accurate, as the government had allegedly asked the researchers to omit the prevalence rates of the infection in containment zones or hotspots in 10 cities. This is still a developing story. That leads us to the fifth thing you need to know: herd immunity. This is the phrase we have been constantly hearing since the early days of the pandemic. It basically means this: when a significant population has immunity against an infection, either being exposed to the virus or by vaccination, those who have no antibodies or the immunity can be protected, as the virus cannot easily spread within the population. Its RO number or the reproductive rate lowers, eventually getting us out of the pandemic. However, when there is no vaccination yet, this herd immunity often comes at a cost. That cost can be especially high in a populous country like ours. Even though the seropositivity rate derived from this first nationwide serosurveillance is an underestimation, we are still miles and miles away from achieving herd immunity. For an effective vaccination strategy, it is essential to identify the appropriate target group and age so that we achieve immunity as a population with as little loss of life as possible. This is where sero surveys, which estimate the prevalence of the infection, are going to be extremely significant.